figures. A bit of a chill in the air first thing, but actually the sun will soon warm things up. Elsewhere, a grey start, a lot of cloud again affecting East Wales, the Midlands, eastern parts of England, central and northern Scotland. But a better chance, I think, through Wednesday of that cloud retreating back to the immediate North Sea coast, where it stays on the cool side, 11 to 14 Celsius on the coast. Warm sunshine replaces the cloud elsewhere, with low 20s likely in some of the warmer spots, South Wales, central southern England, for example. Then into Wednesday evening, the cloud again makes progress westwards as the temperatures fall away. A bit of a brisk breeze actually blowing through the Channel and affecting southwest England in particular during Wednesday and into Thursday. But overall it stays clear in the west and the south, whilst a lot of cloud affects other parts of the UK on Thursday morning. But a repeat performance on Thursday as that cloud breaks up and burns back to the east coast, where indeed it remains grey and on the chilly side through Thursday. However, East Anglia and the southeast a better chance of the sunshine breaking through. And here, a notable temperature difference later this week and into the weekend. Humidity levels rise, and in places, mid to high 20s are expected.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. Well, Prince Harry in the High Court, of course, is the dominant story of the day. It began with a 55-page transcript in which he said the press have got blood on their hands, and he described the UK government as being at rock bottom. But I don't think he was very impressive, and I think he really is struggling to prove that Mirror Group newspapers hacked him. Is Harry onto a loser? We will debate that in just a few minutes' time after the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you. The news at 7 o'clock. The top story, as you've been hearing, is that Prince Harry has accused the former Mirror editor, Piers Morgan, of intimidation. And he added that as a consequence of bringing his claim to court in London, he and his wife Meghan have both been subjected to a barrage of horrific personal attacks. The Duke of Sussex was giving evidence at the High Court today in London against the publisher of the Daily Mirror over alleged unlawful information gathering. Harry also said in court, "Our country is judged globally by the state of our press and our government." And he accused the press of having blood on its typing hands during his cross-examination. Mirror Group Newspapers denies the allegations. Meanwhile, the United States government is going to be challenged in court over its decision to allow the Duke of Sussex a US visa in 2020. That's after Prince Harry's admissions of illegal drug use in his memoir, Spare. It's not known if he admitted his drug use for his visa application. US official policies dictate that visa applicants who are found to be drug users are ineligible for US visas. Downing Street says the government is willing to agree another way forward. Rather than lodging a legal challenge against the COVID inquiry, the Cabinet Office has been asked to present the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson's notebooks to the inquiry by next week, so they may be compared to the redacted copies already provided. Baroness Heather Hallett says she won't be commenting on the legal row. The Foreign Secretary has said today damage to a major dam in Ukraine is a catastrophe and an abhorrent act. Thousands of people have had to be evacuated from their homes after the huge 2-mile-long dam in southern Ukraine was severely damaged. Ukraine is accusing Russia of blowing it up, but a member for Putin's United Russia Party is accusing Ukraine of carrying out the attack. Hundreds of homes, streets and businesses have all been badly flooded. Here, the police watchdog has announced it's launched a criminal investigation into the fatal collision involving a police motorcycle escorting the Duchess of Edinburgh. The officer from the Special Escort Group is being investigated on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving, as well as causing death by careless driving. 81-year-old Helen Holland died after being struck by a police escort bike in West London that was escorting the Duchess of Edinburgh last month. And a Veterans Memorial Service has taken place today to mark the 79th anniversary of the D-Day landings. The Defence Secretary Ben Wallace is in France for the service alongside the French President Macron on the anniversary of the 1944 Normandy landings. Also in attendance was Léon Gauthier. He's the last surviving member of the French commandos who stormed the Normandy beaches defended by Hitler's troops. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, what a day. Yes, Prince Harry in the High Court today. It all began with a 55-page document in which he outlined much of his anger. And I don't blame him for being angry in some ways. After all, his mother was killed in pretty horrendous circumstances. Harry has had to lead life in the public eye. And, of course, in common with all people in the public eye, you have to deal with the British press, and they can be pretty annoying at times. But, of course, it was illegality. It was phone hacking that got the Murdoch press into so much trouble and meant they had to pay out compensation. And it's always seemed to me to be quite difficult to believe that it was just the Murdoch press that were using phone hacking. But Harry, in his 55 pages, accuses the press of having blood on their hands. He's referring in particular to the horrible suicide that we saw with Caroline Flack. He says that the press and the government have sunk to rock bottom. Harry, not sure it was terribly wise to sink into political territory there. And, of course, he had a go at Piers Morgan, who he accuses of intimidation. Well, he set out his case in those 55 pages, but then came the difficult bit. Yes, you've got to be there in the dock, Harry. Not just today, you'll be there all day tomorrow, being cross-examined by a clever barrister. Now, there were 33 stories published by the Mirror Group during the years 1996 to 2010 that were under examination. To put it mildly, I don't think Harry had mastery of his brief. Consider this exchange. Lawyer to Harry. The Daily Mail article the same day, referring to you as being kept inside watching TV and videos inside a ranch house, it quotes Mr. Dyer, who was with you. It appears that's where the info came from. This is the info for the story. Harry says, no, it doesn't appear that way. Lawyer. He was clearly quoted as talking to the press. Harry. I don't expect that Mr. Dyer was speaking to the press. Lawyer. An article in the Australian newspaper that day quoted Mark Dyer speaking to reporters. Harry, I have no idea. Lawyer, the info you alleged was from voicemail hacking, when in fact it was Mr. Dyer. Harry, I see the similarities. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. And of course, during the interrogation, there was mention of his cannabis use. Mention, of course, of the Nazi uniform that he wore to a fancy dress party. And tomorrow, I suspect it will get even more vicious. I can't give you a legal opinion as to what's going to happen in this case, but I can tell you, I think Harry has made a massive error, and I believe Harry is onto a loser. Tell me what you think, please. Your comments, farage@gbnews.com. I'm joined by Michael Cole, former BBC royal correspondent, and I'm pleased to say a regular on this programme. It's been a very long time since a member of the royal family appeared in a court.
Well, back 130 years ago, to the great dismay of Queen Victoria, her eldest son, the Prince of Wales, had to appear in a court case involving cheating at cards, baccarat. And he'd also, previous to that, been in a case involving adultery, the Mordaunt case. Now, in his day, that prince was known as Dirty Bertie, and later Edward the Caresser. So he had a little bit of form, but it was very, very unwise of Prince Harry to follow his example of his great-great-great-grandfather to go into the witness box here because, you know, this was D-Day for the Prince of Litigation. He's got 5 cases going in this country alone. Went the day well? I would say it did not go well. The hurt he feels is raw. The belief he has in what he's saying is profound. The anger he has is incandescent, but, belief is not proof. It is not evidence, and this case will turn on evidence. And what he's got to do, and it's an uphill struggle, and I'm quite surprised how ill-prepared it seems to me, or ill-informed, he's got to...
He didn't seem to be on top of the brief.
Well, I think you put it well there, and kindly, too. I don't think he's been well prepared because he's going to have to try, and we're only at half-time, let's be fair.
Yeah.
It could turn round tomorrow. But he's got to try and prove in these 33 different cases that the Mirror Group newspapers used illicit, illegal means, phone hacking and other horrible means to get these stories. Now, so far, and I've read through the whole of the transcript of the testimony, I don't think he's put a glove on them. And to go into a Colosseum like this, unarmed, as it seems to me, is foolishness. Now, I've written about this in the past. I advised very strongly against it. Don't go there. I'm sure if his grandmother, the Queen, was still alive, she would have said that's the last thing you're possibly going to do. Because in a court case like that, you don't know where the cross-examination is going to go. You've mentioned 2 of the areas that it's already gone into. There'll be others. Yeah. It will be very, very, very damaging to him. And if you haven't got the means to demonstrate that illicit means were used to invade your privacy and that of your friends, well, I'm afraid you're going to look not very convincing. And the thing is, it's not, you know, if it was a jury trial, Nigel, then he would get a lot of sympathy from the jury. But it's not. It's going to be decided by the judge. And the judge can only base it upon the evidence that's adduced. And so far, I don't see there's any evidence that's been adduced.
Nor do I. I feel he's onto a loser. Well, I'm joined now also by Adam Harker, Associate Solicitor, Media and Communications Law Department at Brett Wilson, LLP. Adam, he has to actually prove something, doesn't he, in court?
Well, he does. It's his case to prove. He's brought the claim. It seems at the moment that the case rests on inference and that he's trying to say that there's nowhere else credible that this information can have come from. There's an inequality of information available to him. People very rarely have explicit evidence of hacking. And in this case in particular, he's resting on the failure by Mirror Group to use as witnesses and produce witness statements from the journalists concerned.
I mean, he may well be right. You know, I was part of the hacking case with the Murdoch press. I know that Michael was as well. I actually had proof because I went to my mobile provider and I saw that somebody had accessed my phone records. But he doesn't, yes, even if he's right, he has to prove this in court. What are the consequences for Harry not winning this case?
Well, the first one will be reputational. His credibility for the allegations he makes against the press will be diminished. And cost is the obvious other one.
And have you any idea in a ballpark what something like this might cost if you lose?
Single-figure millions. Maybe 1.5, 2 million pounds, something like that. There are 4 claims being tried together. So although we're now in Prince Harry's phase, we've already had another phase with Michael Lavelle, and I think Fiona Whitehouse is to come next.
And if he wins?
He'll feel vindicated in the allegations he's made, the allegations of unlawful information gathering, which extend beyond phone hacking in this case. It's being described as a phone hacking trial, and that is a lot of it, but the term that is used in court today is unlawful information gathering. It includes covert surveillance and other now prescribed journalistic practices.
But they weren't then?
I'm not sure that's necessarily relevant to his claim now, because it's the misuse of his private information, ultimately, that is his claim.
And he's also facing, in America, today, on the same day, we have an action brought by the Heritage Foundation and demanding to see what was written on his visa application apropos his drug taking. I mean, if you've lied in America, that would be very serious indeed.
I can only assume it would be. Immigration's not my forte, I'm afraid, but I understand there are very strict rules about entry into the US, especially for indefinite.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, process. You know, Michael mentioned the fact it's not a jury trial, so we have a full day's hearing tomorrow. What can we expect from there?
We can expect more of the same, really, at least in the first part of the day. Prince Harry will continue to be cross-examined, and when a claimant's case is at its weakest is at the close of the claimant's evidence. So we expect that, I mean, it was mentioned that Harry didn't lay a glove on them today.
Yeah.
That's quite normal in this type of litigation, and it's when David Sherborne, who is Prince Harry's barrister, cross-examines the Mirror Group's witnesses, we expect to see perhaps the tide turn a little bit, if it is going to.
Interesting. Adam, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Michael,
well, you mentioned it.
Reputationally.
Well, he's shot himself in the foot several times, because you mentioned this problem he's going to have with America, because they take these matters extremely seriously. And if you read his book, Spare, which came out on 10th of January, I mean, it's replete with accounts of smoking weed with the guys, being on the beach, being high, getting high. I mean, repeatedly. Now, the Americans take this very, very seriously indeed. We don't know what he said on his immigration form, but don't forget that, that his wife, Meghan Markle, has been naturalised as a British subject. They're both of them British, they're both living there, and this can make huge problems for them with green cards and all the rest of it, because Americans, you know, and they would probably like them as poster children to show, yeah, we do enforce the law against the high and the mighty, as well as the ordinary people swimming across the Rio Grande on the Mexican border. And so I think that's very serious. But he's condemned himself out of his own mouth. He's admitted to these are very, very serious grade A drug offences. It's a felony. I mean, why on earth he would put that in a book? I think, I mean, when I heard that and saw it, I couldn't believe it because it's so unwise. And I think that's going to make him major problems. It's very important for him that he does get a result out of this. I'm sure the judge will be bending over backwards to try and give him the fairest possible trial. But he can only go on the evidence that's adduced before him. And so far, he's not making any progress.
No, I agree with that. I think we all agree with that. But as Adam says, a lot will rest on Sherborne, his barrister, and the cross-examination of the Mirror. And we can expect him to be very, very well prepared and very, very well briefed. It'll be tomorrow, I think, another pretty excruciating day for Prince Harry. And I just think the whole thing is really desperately sad. Please give me your thoughts. Is Harry onto a loser? Farage at gbnews.com. In a moment, well, there's been a really quite fiery meeting today in Parliament between Kemi Badenoch and some rather prominent Eurosceptics. It's all about a whole load of European Union laws that apparently were going to go onto a bonfire, but they're not anymore.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the people's channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the people's channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the people's channel, Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the people's channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, some feedback from our viewers. I asked the question, is Harry onto a loser? Deb says, yeah, kind of. I don't think Diana would be pleased with him these days. No, I'm not sure the late Queen would feel much the same way. Narinder Kaur, who of course is a regular on GB News, she says, no, I think actually he's going to win. Well, Narinder, you may be right, but then again, you and I never agree on anything. Paul says, Parliament must pass a Titles Deprivation Act of 2023. He cannot continue to hold his royal titles while he deliberately tries to destroy the monarchy. Well, I have to say. And I'll do one more. Ryan says, he has been onto a loser since he married that awful woman, Meghan. He claims to want privacy, so why is he continuing with these pathetic publicity stunts? And, of course, that was the great South Park sketch, wasn't it? We want our privacy. Now, Kemi Badenoch today in committee room in the House of Commons, and she, of course, has decided that we're not going to get rid of thousands of EU laws. We're just going to get rid of a few hundred, most of which actually are completely defunct anyway. And David Jones MP, Richard Drax MP, they were not happy.
My view is that what we want to do is get rid of laws that we don't need, and there is a process for that. It is not the bonfire of regulations. We are not arsonists. I'm certainly not an arsonist. I'm a conservative. I don't think a bonfire of regulations is what we wanted. What we wanted was reform and removal of things that we did not need.
Isn't it the case that a bonfire of unnecessary regulations is precisely what the Commons voted for?
I don't think so. And I think sometimes what we voted for was getting rid of regulation that we don't need.
Yes.
And that's what is happening.
Yes, but to that extent, what the Commons voted for was a bonfire of unnecessary regulations, to get rid of all those unnecessary regulations.
I'm joined by Sir John Redwood, Conservative Member of Parliament for Wokingham. John, the use of the word arsonist. Now, you know, it's quite interesting. You know, I thought Kemi Badenoch was sort of one of us on the Brexit side of the argument. And she's basically saying that people like you are arsonists, which means, well, highly irresponsible would be a nice way of putting it. Why is she behaving like this?
I've no idea. I don't understand what her thinking is, and I don't think we're much clearer this evening, because what we have been saying for several years is there are quite a lot of European laws that were imposed upon us where the UK didn't want them or tried to dilute them or water them down. And there are some laws that clearly need modernising or changing because the world has moved on. Indeed, the EU is revising some of them. We're not always even catching up with that. And so we want a proper audit and review. They've had 7 years now to get on with that. We've given them plenty of ideas on laws that could be removed, improved, changed, amended, and they're not doing it fast enough. There's been some progress, but not nearly enough. And then to be presented with a whole package of laws that are going to go, when most of them don't apply to Britain, or they're out of date. Or
they're defunct, most of them, aren't they?
It doesn't make any difference to anything. We wanted to be in charge of our own laws. Some need improving, making stronger or better. Others need dropping altogether. Others need more flexibility inserted in them. I mean, for example, VAT is one that I've always been very keen to change, because that was a tax imposed by the EU, and they limited what we had to levy it on, and they limited the rates. They nearly always wanted to levy it on more things than we wanted to levy it on, and have higher rates than we wanted. And an obvious thing to do at the moment, when we need some growth, and we need to say to smaller businesses, we're on your side, raise the VAT threshold, because we had to keep that to 85,000.
Yes, and we could have removed the 5% on household fuel.
Take it off fuel, yes, absolutely.
But John, you
these
know...
are no-brainers, you know.
But here's the problem. You know, you and I both know what we believe in. We're perfectly clear. Well, not just in the referendum, but the years running up to the referendum, where we stood and why we stood there. We've got a government that went to the country in December 2019 saying, we understand, we get it. We finally, we get it. Get a thumping great majority of 80, and now I think they are really dashing the expectations of most Brexit voters. David Jones made the point there that, you know, this is what Parliament voted for and you're not doing it. Well, hang on a second. What about what the country voted for? Because, you know, yes, constitutionally we've left. I'm delighted we reversed the status quo.
Yeah.
I'm pleased.
And that was a big win, and that needed doing.
It was a big
and
win.
The other members of that previous parliament were trying to stop that, and they blocked it.
That was a big win.
Mercilessly for a long time.
It happened in the end.
Yeah, and we got there.
You did take a bit of encouragement on the way, but we did get there.
Well, I
in the
didn't.
end.
I was always
No, I know
in favour.
you didn't. But it's not you I'm talking about here.
Yeah.
It's your blooming government I'm talking about here. And yes, we've done that. Yes, we're standing taller in the world. We have much more independence in terms of foreign policy.
Yes.
Export numbers aren't too bad. The City of London's not...
Well, services are fantastic.
Services doing...
And, of course, services were the thing that the EU would never fight for and never include in their trade deals. And then we go and get a trans-Pacific trade deal, and services are an important part of that.
Those are the positives. Yeah. But the negatives are this. We would never have got that Brexit vote over the line in that referendum, and the Conservatives would not have had an 80-seat majority if there had not been realistic expectations that small businesses would have the excessive burden of millions of them lifted off their backs. The government, frankly, I think what she's done today, and in using that rather abusive language against those of us that want to remove these regulations, I frankly view that as betrayal. And you know as well as I do, there was that working-class Labour vote. Labour, they became quite UKIP-y for a bit. They voted Brexit. Many voted Conservative last time. They wanted immigration numbers to come down. They are now out of control in a way that would have been unimaginable when you were first in Parliament. And I genuinely feel, that a huge number of Brexit voters feel it's not working. This government has failed the expectations of those Brexit voters.
Well, I think there's certainly room for a lot of improvement and change. I mean, I think it's very good news that we're not accepting all the liabilities of the big EU expenditure programmes, where they're now borrowing on EU accounts. So tens of billions of pounds, which would have been down to Britain, is not going to be a debt burden on ourselves and our children and grandchildren. And it's great news we got the first vaccine, and it's great news we can do our own
I
trade
get
deals.
there are positives.
There are positives. But you're absolutely right. There's so much more opportunity. And I've been going hoarse explaining this to the government, just as you have through your excellent show. And they're easy wins. This is what I don't understand. I say to the Prime Minister, I say to the Business Secretary, these are popular things. These are things which would liberate. These are things which would make us more prosperous. What is the problem?
Could it be that this so-called Conservative government actually now is very much a globalist government? You've got certainly Jeremy Hunt there as Chancellor. Nearly all of Sunak's instincts are that the state should be bigger, the state should do more, that your party's taken the tax burden to the highest level in 71 years. And even if you look at the way in which government expenditure as part of GDP rocketed during the pandemic, it hasn't gone back down to where it was before by any means. But I return to this main point of mine. It was reducing the numbers coming into Britain that got a lot of people out there to vote for Brexit and an 80-seat majority. 1.2 million people legally settled in Britain last year. Does this government not care?
Well, on the contrary, I mean, the Prime Minister has made it one of his big 5 aims. He says he's going to stop the small boats, well, the sooner the better.
He's not, is he?
Well, I think he's going to have a good go.
You know he's not.
You and I know that the legal migration is the really big numbers, and there is an argument going on within government about that. I think they do have to accept that the legal migration numbers are far too big, and we need to get off this model of inviting people in to do very low-paid jobs and often invite them in at a discount to the current low wages.
John, this is nearly 7 years after the vote.
That is something they can do and should do, because we obviously have potential control of our borders, because we don't have to accept freedom of movement anymore. And the other problem is that all the parties of the left would make it worse, because they're always telling us we don't let enough people in.
So I am really bored with hearing Labour would be worse. You may well be right.
Well, I am right.
You may well be right. Yeah. But, I mean, I put it to you that many millions of Brexiteers are feeling betrayed by this government. Are they right?
Well, that's your language, not mine. No, I think they're feeling that we could do a lot more, and they want us to do more, and they're telling us through the polls that we need to improve our game, and that's what I'm trying to get the government to do. I mean, on this issue of migration, I remember when I was Margaret Thatcher's principal policy advisor in her middle years, we were running with 50,000 a year. And some people thought that was too much. And we said, no, you need some. You need to invite talent in and so forth. And you need to take some asylum seekers. And then it went to 250,000 under the Labour government. Now, suddenly, It's 500,000 plus.
Well,
on the net basis.
I tell you what.
And I think the government does accept that that is far too many. And they would say that, well, of course, there's special cases with Ukraine and Hong Kong, which is a fair point. But we now need to see that those special cases are through the system, and you then expect to see a good reduction. And that's what we want
and now
them to do.
Students come in and bring dependents and all sorts of madness.
Well, they're trying to stop that, I believe, and I think that's very necessary. That's over 100,000
But they've
people.
allowed it to happen. This has all happened. Students being allowed to bring in dependents and those students to work for a further 2 years after they've graduated. This has all happened under Conservative governments. And I put it to you, that if they don't turn this around almost immediately, it's going to be a 97-style wipeout.
Well, I don't agree with that. I will be fighting that election, and I don't spend my time commenting on elections I'm going to fight.
No,
you
fair
need,
dues,
you
fair
need to
dues.
go to independent
Fair
commentators.
dues.
I want to win it.
But I'm trying to express
one of my
to you-
cases will be, as will my parties, that the parties of the left who are the ones in contention...
I'm bored with that.
...will make this far worse.
Right.
And that this government is serious about controlling migration. And as you rightly say, you're going to want some proof of that by the time we get to the election. I don't think that's an unfair point at all.
I've never doubted, Sir John Redwood, your sincerity or your beliefs for one moment, but I have to say, folks, I do rather doubt it in what is supposed to be a Conservative government. And frankly, the message of, we know we're rubbish, but the other lot of worse doesn't do much for me. Now, talking of parties of the left who can make things worse, there is a proposal in Wales that on the 17th of September this year, there'll be a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit, 24 hours a day, in every city, town and village. It is, of course, completely stone bonkers, but we'll debate in a moment whether it can be stopped. It's bad enough with Mr. Khan in London, let alone the whole of Wales.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
And Monday to
It does strike me with devolved powers within the United Kingdom that whatever UK governments do, it seems that devolved powers want to go even further just to prove their value. And of course, it's in London that Sadiq Khan has led the way with 20-mile-an-hour speed limits. Unbelievable. 20 miles an hour on the embankment at 2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, it literally is crackers, and there are speed cameras everywhere. But the Welsh government, the Welsh Parliament, the Senate has passed this law that says from September this year, it'll be 20 miles per hour in basically every town, village and settlement in the whole of Wales. Sam Rowland's joined me. He's a Conservative Member of Parliament for the Senedd in North Wales. Sam, there was a petition, a Senedd, a Welsh Parliament petition that was put up, and I understand they took the petition down because so many people were actually signing it, saying this is mad.
Yeah, exactly. I think over 20,000 people across Wales agree with me that 20 miles per hour on our residential streets, every single residential street in Wales, is just plainly bonkers. We absolutely agree as Conservatives that 20 miles per hour works perfectly well outside schools or hospitals, perhaps where it's proven that it's needed. But on every single residential street in Wales, it does seem over the top, and certainly not what my residents want to see in their town.
OK, let me put that to Anna Semlian, who's the campaign manager for 20's Plenty for us. And Anna, you'd like this to happen across the whole of the United Kingdom. There is this argument, though, isn't there? There is this argument, Anna, that we all understand that around schools between 8 and 9 in the morning and 3 and 4 in the afternoon, you know, cars going at more than 20 miles per hour may well pose a serious threat. And nobody minds those limits for those times of the day. Nobody minds a few speed bumps. But tell me why at 2 o'clock in the morning on a deserted road, a limit of 20 backed up by speed cameras makes sense.
The benefits of 20 miles an hour are that it's safer, it's greener, you use less fuel in your vehicle, less pollution and tyre and brake wear. It will prevent in Wales, it's anticipated, 12,000 injuries in the next 10 years. So those 12,000 people will feel the benefit. And there are 500,000 children in Wales who will benefit. If you think of a school journey, it happens from that child's door to the school and back, and then they perhaps need to go to a friend or a playground or their grandparents. We actually need 20 miles an hour wherever children are to protect them, and older people, our disabled people, our non-drivers, and the climate. You use less fuel when you. I'm
sorry, I really don't buy using less fuel if you never get out of second gear. I think that is very, very debatable indeed. But hang on a second. Why are these kids out at 2 o'clock in the morning? I mean, surely...
Well, they're not, but they are out most of the day.
But here's the point. Here's the point. These wretched speed cameras, and is it any wonder that more people than ever in London are now getting speeding tickets, including the Archbishop of Canterbury, because the limits are so ludicrous on many of the roads at times of the day. If I was to drive down the embankment in London at 2 o'clock tomorrow morning with nothing else on the road, why then should that speed camera find me at 20 miles per hour, which is what you want for the whole of Wales?
All of our speed limits are 24/7, including 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, because that's more understandable for drivers. It makes sense. That's what our speed limiters in our vehicles are programmed to. They're not time limited. We have these speed limits because people are vulnerable on the roads when they walk and cycle, when they're in cars also. It's a bit like having a seatbelt. Seatbelt law took 10 years to come in, but of course now it's accepted that it protects people in vehicles from the damage that they might otherwise cause themselves. And the same is with 20 mile an hour limits. It's a survivable speed. 20 miles an hour is equivalent to a first floor building fall, whereas 30 miles an hour is a third floor building fall. It's 8.8 metres.
We could just ban cars from cities. Wouldn't that be better?
I think we all agree that cars are useful in many situations, but they should not be what we use all the time. And certainly in Wales, there are more than 298,000 households that do not have a car. There's 500,000 children who are not drivers.
Yeah,
There's 600,000 people with concessionary bus passes who are walking and cycling.
I think I I think I sense a sort of anti-car, let's find people racket. Final word to Sam Rowland. Sam, you're in a minority and there's nothing you can do to stop this.
So as a Conservative group in the Senedd, we are in a minority, so you're right. In terms of hands up to vote for these things, we can't prevent it. Plaid Cymru and Labour are determined to push this thing through. I think by far in the majority when it comes to the people's priorities here in Wales, because what hasn't been mentioned today, the Welsh Government's own figures have said that it's going to cost over £4.5 billion to the economy here in Wales. That's people's jobs, it's people's livelihoods, it's food on people's tables because of an ideology to slow people down and to hold Wales back. It's not good enough. It's bombed.
We will see.
Needs to be reversed.
And thank you to both of you for joining me on this debate. I think the audience know pretty much where I stand. Well, the What the Farage moment today is the Apple announcement. Yes, the Vision Pro. Have a quick look at this advert. Is our next guest ready?
You're nothing but a dreamer.
Well, there it is, and you can basically put this thing over your face and you can live in a virtual reality. Everything's virtual, everything will be different. I'm sure in time Apple will think about all levels of human relationships being virtual, if you get my drift. I don't believe this is great progress. I think this is dehumanising in the most extraordinary way. I don't believe that it's a good thing, but at 2,400 quid a throw, I doubt many people will buy it. This technology has already been tried by Mark Zuckerberg from Meta. It didn't work there, and I very, very much hope that it isn't going to work here either. In a moment, we will cross to Normandy and we will speak to a man who stormed the beaches of Omaha 79 years ago today.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News. We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Well, today, of course, is the 6th of June, is the 79th anniversary of that extraordinary operation, D-Day. And landing in my inbox this morning was this photograph. Now, what it shows is a man who's become a friend of mine, I'm pleased to say. His name is Steve Melnikoff. He's been on this show before. He is now 103 years young, and he was there on Omaha Beach on D-Day. And I'm going to go and join live Steve Melnikoff, and he's there with Max Morgan. And Max was a US Navy SEAL and a Vietnam veteran. And Max, being the younger man, you are escorting and accompanying Steve round Normandy, and it looks like you're both doing well. Steve, you always amaze me. I mean, you look fit enough to go and storm the beaches again. Tell us, you're here for the 79th. I know you come pretty much every year to Normandy. Tell us what it means to you.
Well, it means a lot to me because I was here 79 years ago, and we were down the beach today. The water was rough and a lot of waves because we hit it at high tide, and it was great to be back.
Yeah, I mean, it is an amazing thing. And I'm guessing that for the 80th next year, I remember the 75th was a very, very big event. Are you all geared up to come back for the 80th, Steve?
Are you ready to come back for the 80th?
Oh yes. I'm planning and hoping, yes. Yes, because the 75th was big. Yeah, this 80 will be bigger, yes. I'm looking forward to it. I'm certainly want to be back, and I'm just waiting for it.
Yeah, no. And of course, meantime, Steve, you'll be busy. You'll be busy dancing and playing golf between now and then, won't you?
Oh, yes, I will. Well, I don't play. We come over to Queen, but I wouldn't play before because I'm afraid I don't want to be injured, so I'd lose that chance to come over. But yeah, I'll be back. I'm missing some good weather to play, but yeah, I'll be back playing. I'm doing it.
Of course you will. Max Morgan. Max, what's been happening today? What have the ceremonies been? What have you been involved in?
Well, he traveled and revisited a lot of the Normandy battle sites where Steve fought with thousands of his fellow soldiers, many of whom were killed and grievously wounded. And the impact on me was quite remarkable. I think it's important to keep Steve's history, their history, current, because in the current woke environment in the United States, I question whether or not their history and that sacrifice is still being taught in our schools.
Yeah, I worry, Max, I have to say, about what is being taught in schools. But I think, actually, when you get outside of that and you talk to real people, I think you find that all is well and all is OK. And are there many American veterans there this year?
Well, many Americans. Yes, we had a couple of veterans with us, and there were others on other programs, but we did go to the beach, and we were there with Don Cobb, who was a Navy man. He was right in coming close to use artillery, and we had another veteran, but he wasn't a D-Day, but he was a World War II veteran. Yeah, we had a great day.
No,
yeah,
well, we visited the
beach, we visited other places. We spent a little time at Utah Beach, yeah, and we did the whole thing today, yes.
Yeah, and of course, Steve, just quickly, I know that on D+10, you were very seriously wounded, weren't you?
Yes, yeah. Well, this was one of our battles. On June 10, we were Montmont, Legrand. Yeah, we sent over three companies because nobody had been there before, and they wanted to see what was going on there. We found out soon enough. Yeah, we were ambushed right off the bat. We did get over the river safely because we were out of the range of the machine guns. But as we come in there, we tried 3 different times. 2 other companies, C&E Company of the 175th Regiment, we tried to get over, but we were stopped each time. But G Company was able to get around on the north side, and they made it across, and they actually made it into the town. They did plan to stay the night, and they did. It was not a good defensive position, but they stayed there. And the next morning, they had a lot of noise, tanks and make a lot of noise when they're coming at you. When they heard the noise, they were coming, and it was an SS unit. And actually, the whole company was either captured, 50 were killed, and 44 were injured, and including the colonel. And the rest were brought back to Germany. So we went over there with 3 companies. We came back with a company and a half. Yes.
Yeah, and I know you took a very heavy bullet through your throat, and but British nurses, Steve, got you back to where you are.
British nurses got you back to combat.
Yeah. Well, what happened? Because I had a serious injury. I was shot right here in the neck, and after the rest of the unit moved on, I made my way. I dressed it, made my way to an aid station, and believe it or not, I was flown right back and flown back to a hospital, just like one of those 1951 MASH units. Yeah. And I spent a month and a half, and then I came back in August, back to my unit in combat again.
Steve, you're an amazing guy. I'm proud to call you a friend. Max, please look after him. He's very, very valuable cargo. And thank you both for joining me on the 79th anniversary of D-Day. I think I've got time for one very quick Barrage the Farage, and it comes from a Nigel in Bradford.
Hi, Nigel. I'm Nigel. Nice to meet you. My big question to you is, why did you do it to us? Why did you influence so many people to take us out of the EU, particularly for the young people? Why did you do it? That's the question that I want you to keep thinking. I know you regret it, and I know you're going to argue that it was how it's been managed, but you set the agenda. You're responsible. Please, and I know you've got regrets, please do something to get us back into the EU. There's a lot of young people that really do feel it. Thank you, Nigel, from Nigel here.
Well, the real answer to that question is the previous segment, isn't it? On the incredible sacrifices we and our allies made in 2 world wars so that we and the rest of Europe could be free. Independence, liberty, democracy. That's why. Jacob Rees-Mogg joins me.
Hello. I was tempted to answer that. You did it because you were doing a great public service, and without your dedication to leaving the European Union and exposing the European Union, we would never have left.
Thank you. It was the right thing to do.
It was the right thing to do.
Even if you're not making a mess
Even
of
if we could do it better and there's more to be done, it's still... We've saved £191 billion by not being in their COVID recovery scheme.
There are positives, but there's anger about immigration.
Anyway, I'm meant to be talking about my programme,
go on, tell us.
We're going to be talking about His Royal Highness Duke of Sussex and why freedom of the press is everything, and we must not allow the wealthy and the powerful to undermine the freedom of the press.
Big stuff. Now, Dan Wootton has got a very special programme coming up tonight. Have a listen.
It's D-Day for Prince Harry as his battle with the press reaches the High Court. But will he regret becoming the first royal in 130 years to take the stand? We'll bring his bombshell testimony to life, voiced by an actor, before getting the reaction of royal experts like Tom Bower and Lady Colin Campbell. Plus, Paul Burrell responds exclusively to the Duke's latest jibes. Harry's evidence, the verdict on Dan Wootton tonight, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m, only on GB News.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGivern here with the GB News forecast from the Met Office. Cloudy for many during the next 24 hours. It will be clearest in the west, and later through the day on Wednesday the cloud will break up more widely. But for the time being, it's the same old weather pattern we've had for some weeks now. High pressure to the north of the UK, this cool and cloudy easterly airflow bringing suppressed temperatures in from the North Sea. And through Monday night, as well as through much of Tuesday, we've seen this persistent low cloud spread across much of central and eastern UK, and that creeps a bit further westwards during the early hours of Wednesday. But we keep the clear skies for Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, North West England, West Wales, and here a few mist patches likely with temperatures into the single figures. A bit of a chill in the air first thing, but actually the sun will soon warm things up. Elsewhere, a grey start, a lot of cloud again affecting East Wales, the Midlands, eastern parts of England, central and northern Scotland. But a better chance, I think, through Wednesday of that cloud retreating back to the immediate North Sea coast, where it stays on the cool side, 11 to 14 Celsius on the coast. Warm sunshine replaces the cloud elsewhere, with low 20s likely in some of the warmer spots, South Wales, central southern England, for example. Then into Wednesday evening, the cloud again makes progress westwards as temperatures fall away. A bit of a brisk breeze actually blowing through the Channel and affecting southwest England in particular during Wednesday and into Thursday. But overall it stays clear in the west and the south, whilst a lot of cloud affects other parts of the UK on Thursday morning. But a repeat performance on Thursday as that cloud breaks up and burns back to the east coast, where indeed it remains grey and on the chilly side through Thursday. However, East Anglia and the southeast a better chance of the sunshine breaking through. And here, a notable temperature difference later this week and into the weekend. Humidity levels rise, and in places, mid to high 20s are expected.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting.